Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all okay. I hope you can hear me and maybe see me. Well, at least one of those things would be nice. Hello, good afternoon. Can see a few of you in the chat there. I can see Tish and Robin and Susan and Wendy and David and Robin again. Hello, lovely to be here. And now I'm going to start with an apology. Hi Beatrice, hi Trisha and Cynthia. Today's picture quality may not be the regular standard, and I'll tell you why. The reason why is that the clip that attaches the phone to the gimbal I guess must still be on my desk. Hello Laura, hello Jennifer. Because it's not in the little bag in my rucksack. I haven't lost it anywhere. It got home after my last tour that I did. So it must still be on my desk. And so I can't attach the phone to the gimbal. So it's going to be a handheld today. You'll be good to know it's not cold enough that I'm going to be shivering. I've not had a drink for a number of years, so my hands aren't going to be shaking for any other reason, and I'm not quite old enough that my hands are going to be shaking just due to sheer infirmity. So hopefully I'm going to be able to keep a relatively steady picture for you as we go around, but if I am getting carried away with telling you things, please do let me know in the chat. Hello Mary, hello Catherine, hello Dawn, hello to everybody. And I mean, it's going to be okay at the moment because I'm literally sitting down, resting my arm on something and holding the phone. So it's perfectly fine. When we get moving, it's going to be a little bit of more of an issue, but it'll be fine, I'm sure. So I'm delighted to be here today to bring you this rescheduled tour, because this was, originally supposed to be a number of weeks ago before I headed off for my tours in Germany, but due to weather conditions it was necessary to reschedule. Weather conditions is something that we always have to be aware of, but when you're dealing with Tewkesbury and anywhere alongside the River Severn and the River Avon, you really do have to keep an eye on what's going on, because they are very prone to flooding. And the night before that tour, I checked out some of the local news channels down here, and it was telling people where they could go in the town hall and at the police station and so on to pick up their sandbags, and the evacuation points and the places where people could go to stay overnight if they needed. So, all of that stuff. And I figured this is not going to be the ideal place to go and do the tour. So that's why I cancelled it. Also, I'd have been having to drive through some very heavily flooded areas and some pretty extreme weather to actually get here back on that day. So it was kind of I think a sensible decision all round. But today it is looking great, and we have some lovely autumn colours as well, which we wouldn't have had a few weeks ago. So hello to those who are just joining us. Hello to MB, nice to see you here. Nice to see everybody here for this community funded tour today, and it is at quite an early time, and I appreciate those of you who have really kind of made an effort. If your time zone means it's still sort of a strange time in the morning. Hello Valerie, lovely to see you. But we are in winter time now here. I mean, in terms of the time differences, we put the clocks back, and that means it starts getting dark here on a clear day, about 4:30, 4:45. But it's pretty dull today. It's not really got properly light all day, so we've been actually quite justified doing it at 3 p.m. UK time. It makes sure that we can actually do it in daylight, because definitely better to see Tewkesbury in the daylight. Hello Claire, I don't know whether that's Claire who's one of my spanner assistants or another Claire, but you are welcome all the same. I didn't see you crop up. Hello Mary, nice to see you as well down there in Cornwall. I don't know if she's my Claire. I think she's more I think she's her own Claire, or Mary as her mother can have gets first claim on her, I think. But it is that Claire. That's great. Well, nice to have you here, Claire. And Claire and Beatrice, as always, as my trusty assistants, are here to help me in case there are any technical issues and to make sure that we can communicate smoothly. So I'm going to make a start, and I just want to reiterate for those who joined after I had explained before, the picture today may be a little bit shaky. The clip that connects my phone to my gimbal, I believe, must have inadvertently been left on my desk back in my office, and it's absolutely no use to anybody there. Let me tell you that much. But I have the phone, and I have my microphone, and I have a hand. So we are going to use those pieces of equipment to try and our best to keep a steady picture as we go along. Hello Ronnie, and hello Leslie as well. So let me stand up. That's always the most difficult bit of the tour these days. And, so I'm going to be well, let me turn the camera around in a moment, and I'll show you where we are. But it's great to have everybody here, and thank you to everybody who has contributed to making this tour possible. We do have a couple of other tours currently on the wish list on the Buy Me a Coffee page for the community funded tours. The Snow Dogs Sculpture Trail in Buxton, that is fully funded, so we're going to be able to do that one, which is great news. But we have an Evesham tour and our next Cotswold tour as well. And so if you do want to support those, if you're able to do so, every little bit helps to get those up to the target figure, so we can get those going too. So without further ado, let me turn the camera around and we will see where I am. Oh, that's not the one. I pressed the wrong button. Instead of turning the camera around, I turned off, I hid my chat. That's okay, I can soon do that. Luckily I didn't hit stop. Here we go. So we're starting with a Riverside scene, and you know, Tewkesbury is a town that is here because of the rivers. It is a town that is at the confluence of two very important rivers. What we're looking at here is the Avon, and this is where the Avon flows into the River Severn. So the longest river in Britain comes down from North Wales through places that we've been on tours like Shrewsbury and Bridgenorth, Ironbridge, Bewdley, and eventually gets to Worcester as well, is north of here. Then it eventually comes here, and the Avon flows down through Warwick and Stratford and Evesham and Pershore and flows into it here. And it's a town that grew up next to these this important river junction, and that made it an important transportation and trading centre, a place with water power for mills, which was one of the main industries here, along with textile industry, which also requires a lot of water. And so its location made it a centre of transportation, of trade. So Tewkesbury is known for those things. It's known for its beautiful medieval abbey, and we'll see the Abbey church right at the end of our tour. It's known for some lovely timber frame buildings, and it is also known as the site of a very important battle in the year 1471, a battle in the Wars of the Roses. So we are standing on a bridge. We are on a bridge that is known as King John's Bridge, and actually the first stone bridge still forms part of the basis of this bridge, was indeed built here during the reign of King John, which was in the early 13th century. So I'll jump up and down a little bit. It's still pretty firm. But it's actually, that's quite a modern name that's been applied to it. Its official name, its local name has always been Long Bridge, because it actually crosses two stretches of water. So this is the main river Avon here. So the Avon comes in here from the north, and then the Avon flows under here, and on the far side you see some lovely riverside meadows looking out a little bit into the countryside. And over that way, as we're looking now, that's where the River Severn comes in from the right, and the two merge together just on the other side of the town. But you then get a little bit of an island, or what is these days kind of like an island, because you get a man-made second waterway. Because what happened, you got the Avon, and they created a man-made channel where the water could be diverted, part of the flow, to power mills in the town. And that is called the Mill Avon, imaginative name. But this bridge crosses both of those. And in the middle, that means that you get kind of an artificial island almost, where you have the Avon and the Mill Avon, which we're going to cross in a moment. And the Mill Avon used for mills, as I said, but also for mooring of the boats. Still used for boat moorings today. And this is really one of the main roads comes in here. This the road that goes over these bridges is the A38. It's a major road that runs all the way down from really the northeast of England, down through Yorkshire, down through the Midlands, and then through Birmingham to Worcester, and down here onwards southwest. So it runs sort of northeast to southwest across the country. So it's a very, very busy road, but coming together of roads to different places, crossing over the rivers here. So it became a trade centre, and it also later became a coaching centre. So there's an awful lot of pubs and hotels here, and a lot of buildings that were restored in the 18th century as it became wealthy on the back of all that trade and coaching routes. So this is the Mill Avon, with a big boat marina just upstream there. It's kind of ironic these days that the Mill Avon is actually a much calmer flow than the main bit of the Avon. Obviously, originally they'd have wanted the powerful flow through here to power the mills, but this is the way it's, these days. It's better to have the calm water where the boats are going to be moored. So anybody who has just joined us, remember I can read this, Robin, you're making me all embarrassed. So the lovely old row of Riverside cottages here, brick fronted now, but originally would have been timber framed. These are about 600 years old, and they are known as King John's cottages because they are next to King John's Bridge. So that's the King John's cottages there. And across the way we have a fantastic medieval hostelry. So the sign tells us Gloucester's oldest inn. Well, it doesn't mean the city of Gloucester. That refers to the county of Gloucestershire, which is the county that Tewkesbury is in. Only just. The border with Worcestershire is a couple of miles away to the north. This says it's Gloucestershire's oldest inn, the old Black Bear. What a beautiful timber frame building it is. And it dates back, like the bridge, to the reign of King John. There has been a hostelry recorded on this site since the 13th century. Most of what we see today is much newer than that, early 16th. So, you know, instead of it being 750 years old, most of what we see today is only 500 years old. But even so, this is always, it has an unbroken history as a hostelry, going back to the early 13th century, which is pretty impressive. And it has the symbol of the old black bear, the bear and staff, which is the symbol actually of the Earls of Warwick these days and the county of Warwickshire. But originally it was a symbol of the Beauchamp family, who were Earls of Warwick in the medieval period. And the Beauchamp family were really big names throughout this region. They held the earldom of Worcester as well, and were just sort of a really important family. So that symbol crops up in places that are not actually part of Warwickshire. So some more lovely little cottages on the corner here, lovely flowers still going. I like to, probably because of warmth from the traffic fumes, maybe here on this road junction. No, I'm going to try and get across here. It is an interesting place because there are so many busy roads. It's not a big town. It's only got a population of about 25,000, and that's really because of its location. It couldn't grow because there are the rivers and the floodplains and the meadows, and then you get hills coming up quite quickly. The town couldn't really grow, so you know, you would have thought that, you know, when you get to the time of the Industrial Revolution, a place with this long history and this long trading and transportation tradition would have been the kind of place that would have just sort of started to introduce more industries and become a real kind of growing town, becoming a city. But because of its location, it couldn't really expand very much physically, and so it remained this quite small size. Hello, poet. And one of the other things that happened because of the town couldn't expand, they did what is always happening when you're building on an island or in a constricted space, like, I don't know, Manhattan, like in Hong Kong, Singapore. You build upwards a little bit. So they built, you know, 3-4 story houses, and between them they had these little alleyways and passageways. Originally there were over 60 of them in the town. Now there are only about 30 remaining, but they are a really interesting and distinctive feature of Tewkesbury that are entirely due to the fact that they had to kind of squeeze in as much as they could into the available space. Now I hope the picture has been okay so far. I know it's slightly more jumpy than when I'm using the gimbal, but hopefully I'm holding it steady. I'm trying to do it swap over arms because it is a little bit I feel like I've been to the gym actually. So got a lot of buildings at this end of the town that are really from the 18th century, and we see this kind of typical Georgian architecture, but don't be too fooled. A lot of these are Georgian brick facades on much older timber frame buildings. 18th century frontage, just because that's the trend and that's what people want to show off by investing in that kind of building. But behind them you've got a lot of 15th, 16th century buildings. Now we've also got modern buildings, of course, what town doesn't? But there is something interesting that I can tell you about one of the modern buildings, because one of the modern buildings is a theatre. It's just up here. We won't spend too long looking at the shopping centre. There's a new bus station as well, but the modern building we can see there with the grey section, the grey roof. This is a theatre. It's called the Roses Theatre. Opened in the 1970s and named after the Wars of the Roses, the famous battle here that took place in that conflict. Probably, I mean, it's a good little local theatre, really nice for a town this size to have a theatre like that. But the reason it's known, I guess, on a wider scale is because of something that happened here in 1984, and actually something quite sad. And the much loved and very funny comedian, Eric Morecambe, part of the duo Morecambe and Wise. He was performing on stage here in 1984 when he had a heart attack and collapsed. And he was rushed to hospital from the theatre, and unfortunately he passed away in hospital in Cheltenham. So it's quite a kind of big news at the time that Eric Morecambe collapsed while performing on stage, and it was here in Tewkesbury that actually happened. And anyone who remembers Morecambe and Wise, you know, they were made in the 60s and 70s, and their specials are still shown at Christmas time every year, and they are still very, very funny. He was the kind of the silly one, and Ernie Wise was the straight man out of the two figures in the duo there. So, one of the biggest houses in town and one of the most impressive is this one, the Tudor House Hotel. That's me talking about people collapsing, that is, you see. My fault. We've just talking about Eric Morecambe collapsing, and right on cue an ambulance comes. I mean, what couldn't do better, could it? Playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. That's right, Donna. A bit like me when I play the guitar. So the Tudor House Hotel is quite an interesting history. It began life as a private residence, and it was originally built in the early 17th century, right at the beginning of the 17th century, as a timber-framed building. But in the 18th century, it had a brick facade put on it. We can still see the left-hand side still has it, but the main part of the building, in the 19th century, it was then plastered over and had kind of fake timber framing put on it. But it is actually a genuine timber frame building behind all that. Originally a private house, and then for a time it served as the local courthouse and as a school. And the school there was run by a man called Samuel Jones, and he was later one of the Pilgrim Fathers. He went over to the US as one of the Pilgrim Fathers. He'd been operating a school here in this building. Later it reverted to being a private residence, and then in the golden age of coaching it became a coaching inn, and it remains an inn to this very day. So it is still operating. Not really that many of the old coaching inns here are still operating, but this is a lovely one, and it's quite interesting that it's got the fake timber framing on now. Now we are going to test something out now. We're going to go down this little alleyway. This is not one of the real small passageways, but I'm thinking that this is one where the signal might actually hold up. Beatrice, it does look like a nice hotel. I've never been into it, but the fact that I've never been there probably suggests it is a nice hotel. Far too nice for the likes of me. So we're making our way down here, and some of the wider alleys here were sort of little streets where goods were taken down to the river. You know, leads to the Mill Haven, where you had the mills, where you had the boats, and so this was where goods could be transported by horses, by carts, from the centre of the town. And as we come down here, we see one of the huge mills. And milling, you know, was a traditional industry here for centuries, but it became more industrial. Originally, the water from the flow of the Avon was being used, but in the 19th century, this huge industrial scale corn mill, grain mill, was built in 1859, extended in 1889, and they used the water for powering the steam engines and cooling the steam engines. So the actual grinding of the grain in that mill on that huge industrial scale, that was done by steam power, but they're still using the water from the river, and they are using the river to transport the grain. In fact, most of the grain that was ground in that mill was brought upriver from the sea. It was grain that was being imported from the US and Canada, and it was being brought here for grinding. And that was in operation until the 1980s. So we have a lovely view of it here. Healing's Mill, it was called. And again, we get a nice view, if I can pan around a little bit here. So we've got the Mill Avon closest to us, and then the main Avon, and just around, as the river goes around the bend there, that's where it joins it, the Severn. The Severn comes in from the right. And there's an island there with the water going all around it, which is called, the meadows is called the Severn Ham, like the meat. That's a nature reserve and quite an interesting little area to walk around, actually. So people do live on boats here. When we were walking along here earlier, a lady who'd maybe been out for lunch or something, she looked very smartly dressed, and she was climbing down the steps quite in these heels to get onto the boat where I guess she lives. It's actually quite funny. She didn't look like the kind of person who's who live on a narrowboat, but there we go. Yes, Dawn, I think it's not really been used for anything yet. Nothing legitimate anyway. I'm sure it's been used for various things. But yeah, it is a place where you can just imagine it being converted into apartments or some kind of mixed-use development, you know, maybe with a hotel and some commercial premises as well. But I think it's a heritage building, so it's a listed building. You've got these beautiful grain warehouses and all the facilities going with that are all in good condition, but they're all boarded up and none of them any longer in use. But you know, hopefully these will be kept and modernised, redeveloped in some way. And this is kind of the main road. This road would have been widened, would have been a medieval lane, a little bit like the one we walked along, but it's this is a you know, would have been widened to give access to the mill. And at this point the Mill Avon kind of has a slightly different name, and it's called the Back of Avon. The Back of Avon, not the front of Avon, the Back of Avon. And not the Bard of Avon, that's Shakespeare. Not the Back of Avon. Some beautiful willow trees. And Emma is at work today, so she's not able to join us live, but I'm sure if she's watching the recording of this at some stage, she will love those willow trees. Hi Lynn, nice to see you. We're going to head back up into the centre of the town in a moment. So there's some fantastic buildings to look at over there. Just make sure I go the right way. I don't want to get stuck up one of these little alleyways that doesn't actually lead anywhere anymore. Make sure I go the right way. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So this was another of the roads that went down here, and you know, it's been modernised. You've got modern apartments here, social housing, I think, and more modern sort of industrial units. But if we were to have gone back 200 or 300 years, this is an area that would have been teeming with little alleyways and courtyards and small houses, people who were working on the boats, people who were working in the mills, people involved in doing outwork, home-based work in the textile industry, and in all of the local sort of trades and industries that were going on here, and living their lives. And it was an area where they always said that the population was very transient, because it was always noisy and a lot of hustle and bustle, maybe a bit of crime, and you know, it was an area where people would come and live for a little while. But people did not tend to live for long, like their whole life, in these kinds of areas, apart from the people who made their living directly from the river, because they always needed to live next to the river. Now this Britannia Inn is it's got a brick facade these days, but it's a building originally from the 16th century and has a lot of original features inside it, particularly wooden parts of the building, the staircase and hallway. So we're back on that main street again, coming up, and Smith's Lane, way to the river. Smith's Lane, a reference to some of the trades that were going on down there, the blacksmiths trades that were going on along there. Now, which side of the road do we want to be on for the best here? I think we want to cross, so I'm going to do that while I can. Ooh. It's a little bit of a trade-off, because I want to be able to show you the fantastic buildings, you know, in their entirety, but on the other hand, they often have some little sort of quirky little things that we need to be a bit closer to. But you know, all of the large buildings that you see, they tend to have been inns. So now, where you have this black and white structure with the 3 gables with Lloyd's Bank in it, that was a large private house and formerly an inn, and later redeveloped as a bank in Victorian times. But the building itself dates back to the 18th century, 1765, and then redeveloped in the Victorian and the later and the early 20th century. But next to it, a building that sticks out, not just because it's quite an impressive building, but because it's stone. It's a limestone building, Cotswold limestone. You know, we're not a million miles from the Cotswolds here. And this is the town hall. Now you might be able to see that there's kind of the section at the front, and then further back you can see the triangular top of a roof. And originally the rear section was the town hall, where the local government was, and then this front section was a market hall. Originally open, so it was just kind of an open area for markets. But in the 18th century, then they decided to roof it over. They roofed over the market hall and put this beautiful front on it. because they were going to be having a royal visit, they spent a lot of money so that the King George could come and see it. George the Third. So much so that a few years later the local authority went bust because they'd spent too much money redesigning their town hall to try to impress the king, and they didn't have any money left. So they went bust. Now, one of the things that's interesting is, out of all the pubs that there have been here, most of the ones that are still here are on the other side of the road from where we're standing now. There's only one of the old coaching inns and the old historic medieval taverns on this side of the road, and it is this one, and it has a very interesting name, the Nottingham Arms. There we go, the Nottingham Arms. And this is a building in its current form that is 18th century, but we know there's records and some of the timbers within there dating back to the 14th century. Why is it called the Nottingham Arms? We don't know for sure. It is the Nottingham coat of arms that is on the pub sign, but we think it's probably because there were so many nobility and knights and people from all over the country fighting in the Battle of Tewkesbury in 1471. It's probably a link to people from Nottingham who were actually involved with the battle back then in the Wars of the Roses. Beatrice, was the king impressed with their building? I don't know, but I think George III was a fairly kindly chap. He'd have probably been quite impressed, I think. I mean, I'm sure it looked very fine. I mean, it still looks very fine now. So, the Nottingham Arms. So there's the Nottingham Arms. There's a Nottingham Arm. There's another Nottingham Arm. And I'm telling you, after holding this phone, trying to keep the picture steady, there's going to be two very tired Nottingham Arms at the end of this particular tour. Another one of these great little passageways here, look. They're just, but aren't they fantastic, the way they curve around there. So all of these timber frame buildings that survive a lot of them were inns. The one over the way here was originally called the Golden Fleece, 1591. But it later, I don't know what kind of shop it was, but they were certainly of a high quality, because you can see the royal coat of arms. I'm going to try and get across and show you, but it's a bit dangerous. I might not. I might see if the lights change while I'm down by the crossing. That might be better. I'll show you from across here. So this is 1885 to 1901 by royal authority. That means that whatever the shop was, it's now a hair salon, so it definitely wasn't that. Whatever the shop was in there, they were official suppliers to Queen Victoria from 1885 until her death in 1901. And so they are very proudly showing that. And you'll often find that places that did have that royal charter for producing and selling a particular good, they keep it up. You don't see many from the time of Queen Victoria, but you still see quite a few in London, particularly for the Queen Mother, so the mother of Queen Elizabeth II, and certainly, obviously, we still have quite a few from the time of Elizabeth II are still there. It's not so long ago, but now this was one of the coaching inns that was created in the 18th century. It was one of the biggest ones, called the Wheatsheaf actually, and you can see nowadays it's shops on the ground floor, but it retains that Georgian look. and where the entrance to Peacock's Close shop was, that's where the coaches would have gone in. And we can see the little balcony there. The balcony was used in political election campaigns, so it was where candidates would give speeches to the local people from the balcony up there at the inn. That was quite a common thing at the time. It's also where the results of elections would be read from, and when there were things like military parades and things like that, it's where the local dignitaries would stand as the soldiers marched past along the street. So really really interesting little feature there. Now here's one of my favourite buildings in Tewkesbury. Beautiful timber frame building. Look at that, and your eyes are not deceiving you if you feel like it's tilting towards us a little bit, because it is. It is known colloquially as the House of Nodding Gables. So it looks like the house is kind of, the top bit is nodding, and that's because one of the big beams on the top floor actually broke or cracked through. The building itself is structurally sound, but what it meant was it tilted a little bit over time, but it is structurally sound. It's in use, but it is kind of got that effect of leaning out over the road here, and it has this sign of the Golden Key outside. It's because there used to be an ironmonger's there where keys were made, locksmiths and ironmongers. But the main function that building was known for in the history of the town was as the central ticket office. So all of the stagecoach companies who went through Tewkesbury on their way to and from different places, staying at the coaching inns, this was where you would be able to go and get your tickets for all of them. Pretty impressive ticket office, huh? Beautiful building. Okay, let's make a little bit of progress. Starting to get busy now. End of school time, people picking up their kids, people coming out of work for the weekend. Yeah, Dawn, don't lean out the window or the whole lot might come down. Definitely be right on that one. Now another one that looks, it's not got quite so much of a lean on it, but you can definitely see where the wood's warped a little bit over the years, and that's this one. It was called Cross House because it overlooks the cross, the central point of the town where the roads meet. And you can see this is a huge building. Look how far back that goes. Amazing building. That is a 15th and 16th century timber framed building. Yes, this is a high street. In fact, it's actually called High Street. So this is the main street of the town. Yeah, absolutely. But look, and you can see the kind of the curve on that a little bit as the wood, it's warped over the years. But this is this is so old, 500 years old. Now I'm going to cross over actually, he says. I don't care what these cars and vans do, because I think we should go and have a little look at this. So this is a great building here. Look, I mean, look at this. This is just... I was looking at the information leaflets in the tourist information earlier, and they had leaflets for a Tewkesbury ghost tour. So just amazing. And look at and they've got some great names of beers. Look at this. What's the top beer on there? Wobbly Bob. I think if you had a couple of pints of Wobbly Bob at 6%, you would definitely be wobbly. And now the cross before this huge building was a tavern. It was a private home, but it was also owned partly by the town council, and it was a local residence of the Lords of Tewkesbury, and a centre of local government, and a centre of the courthouse. But this wealth, this is, I mean, you all know I love a good doorway, but this is a spectacular doorway. Look at this. We've got amazing carvings on. We've got dragons and demons. We've got gargoyle-y type things. We've got an angel. We've got a green man type figure, fertility, ancient fertility symbol. We've got a pelican. What have we got on this side? We've got, that might be a dragon, might be a seahorse, I don't know. But these figures just look at, I mean, that is incredible. That is 500-year-old carving on this doorway, and isn't that amazing to see? I just think that's incredible that has survived so well. It's just amazing, isn't it? So we're going to turn around the corner. This is the end of the high street, and we turn onto the road that leads along to the Abbey, and we're going to make our way along there. But there's a couple of really fascinating buildings before we actually get to the Abbey, because the timber frame buildings haven't finished. In fact, we've got another one here. Now this one these days holds the Tourist Information Office, but on the front it has a sign, and that's been there since the 19th century, and it's a hat. It was a hat shop during the 19th century, and still at a time when most people couldn't read, so you would advertise what you sold by putting a picture up or a model. And this is a particular kind of hat. It's called a beadle's hat. A beadle would be a kind of a local official, so it's a kind of hat that everybody would recognise because it was a part of an official uniform. The building itself, well, it's very, very ancient, as you can see. Parts of this building date back to the 14th century. That's according to what some of the timbers have been dated to. But above the door, again, we have this amazing carving, but we have beautiful carving here, and we have there 1664. Now in 1664, the house was kind of extended and modernised, and it says BRK. And that stands for Bartholomew and Catherine Reed. They were the owners of the house at that time. Bartholomew Reed was a successful glover. So they were doing very well for themselves. And I just want to point out we've seen a lot of these buildings that have been restored over the years. Just across the way there, that's a building called Warick House, the 3-storey timber framed building there, or 4-storey, ground floor plus 3. And again, very typical building upwards with the little passageways between. Warick House was almost completely destroyed by fire in 1981, and it was lovingly restored as close to the original 17th century style as they could get. So this is a very modern restoration and reconstruction of those traditional buildings. Now we've got another pub, the Royal Hotpole. It was originally called the Hotpole Inn. Am I going to cross over? Yes, I think I am. And the Hotpole Inn became the Royal Hotpole Inn in the early 20th century. Because again, we've got a royal standard outside on top of the old coaching entranceway on the portico there. and that commemorates a stay there by Queen Mary in the 1930s. So the Hotpole Inn was what it was called in the 19th century, and if you are a big fan of Charles Dickens, you will be maybe familiar with it, and a lot of Dickens aficionados like to come here to have a drink, a meal, or even to stay, because it is a pub that crops up in the Dickens novel The Pickwick Papers. Pickwick and his friends stay in the Hotpole in Tewkesbury in that particular novel, so Dickens must have been here himself and decided this was a good place to feature in his novel, and so that's a particular link that it has. But it is still going strong. It's owned by the Wetherspoons chain these days, who do whatever anybody says about Wetherspoons and the politics of its owner. They do a great job of restoring and preserving lots of historic buildings up and down the country, and this is one good example of that. So let's carry on a little bit, shall we? Again, it's just one timber frame building after the whole town. Again, look at the lean on these. I promise you I'm holding that straight. That's got a good lean on it, hasn't it? Even more on the side, this one. So let's, I'm going to go back across. He says, hopefully. I don't know whether I told you why this place was called Tewkesbury. Well, if I did, there was a hermitage. Quite strange that a community grows up around a hermitage. Kind of defeats the object. But a hermit whose name was Theoc, and it became Theocsburg, which meant the settlement of Theoc, and that over time became Tewkesbury as we know it today. So we've been looking through the town, and I've been mentioning a couple of times the Abbey, and I'm going to tease you a little bit more with the Abbey, because there is the beautiful Norman Abbey Church of Tewkesbury Abbey, the tower, and we are going to be working our way around to the Abbey to finish just outside it. Now, interesting business name over there, Dragon Vets. Saw that earlier and I thought, well, they've got a very prestigious place in the town, and I wouldn't have thought there'd be that much business for dragon vets, but maybe there's lots of dragons being kept as pets around here that need medical treatment. I don't know. So we've got another beautiful row of cottages here, which were built by the Abbey, and the Abbeys were not just they were religious centres, but they were also commercial centres, and the Benedictine Abbey of Tewkesbury built a row of cottages here in the 15th century. They're called Abbey Lawn cottages, and they would have been rented to people who were then having shops, so they'd have lived on the upper floors, and the original windows they'd have been able to then fold down, and they'd have had then like their market stall directly to sell to people going along the street, because you're right in the marketplace here, and this little kind of bus pull-in area and sort of parking area next to the Abbey. It's believed that is where the first charter markets took place, and we started off on St John's Bridge, and it was actually King John, King. He wasn't a saint. King John's Bridge, and he has links to the town in the sense of being the first person to grant a market charter to the town and to the Abbey. So that's where the medieval marketplace was, and so that's why the Abbey used some of its land here to build these cottages where people could trade and they could rent them as residents. One of them is a lovely little craft and gift shop. And then right in the middle you kind of have one part of it, look, that's just been randomly, this is what I mean when I say that they were converted to look like Georgian buildings from the front. I mean, you can see here that's just a brick, a few layers of brick as a facade with Georgian style windows, but it's within this row you have the John Moore Museum. Now, John Moore was a local journalist and broadcaster, and he did an awful lot towards preserving the history and being involved in a lot of projects for conservation of the historic buildings and landscapes around here, and that's why their local museum after him. So a fantastic set of buildings here. I think some of these look residential. I can see they might be like holiday cottages. And here's a beautiful building as well. This is kind of one where they've restored it, but done it in a style that might have been kind of how they originally looked, because the black and white was not the way they would originally have looked in the 15th century, 14th century. It was something that became popular first in the 17th century, and particularly then the Victorians. Originally, the plasterwork, the panels between the wooden beams could have been any colours. They might have been quite natural colours, just like a brown colour, but sometimes they would have added maybe animal blood or some kind of pigment to it to make a colour like this. And this is quite an authentic restoration of the buildings here. Now we're just going to look at one of the little alleyways, which is one of the nicest, and then we're going to go over to the cathedral. I promise you, I'm not going to miss it out. It's the most famous thing in Tewkesbury. So this little courtyard and passageway is called the Old Baptist Chapel Court. Look at that. Now I'm not going to go in there because I can see my signal's dropping quite a bit. So I hope you can see it okay. And this leads to the original. They weren't having very elaborate forms of worship, and to be a complete contrast from the parish church, which by that time was the old Abbey church. So, that was what they were doing. They were sort of deliberately saying we're family and community based, rather than having these very grand places of worship. Okay, so it looks like some of you lost me. My signal didn't appear to drop that much, but we were in the Baptist courtyard, and the Baptist church decided to have their worships services in an old residential house in the middle of those courtyards and alleyways, and the idea behind that was that they would be then contrasting the Baptist way of doing things with the Church of England, the established church, because the Church of England, well, the parish church by that time was the Abbey Church. So just across the road, very clever. They're saying, yes, this is your Church of England, but it's this grand place. They've got these very formal styles of worship, high church, if you like, if you want to call it that. And the Baptist community, much more based in the family, a domestic setting within the community of local people. and it was really kind of a way of differentiating themselves. And that the little building down there was the Baptist place of worship from the 1600s until the Victorian era, when they built a larger worship centre, Baptist church within the town. Now I'm going to get over here so we can take a look at this beautiful abbey. So Tewkesbury Abbey, beautiful church, and once the church at the centre of a huge Benedictine monastery. Now we believe that there has been a church on this site for around 1,300 years, but in the 11th century a new monastery, a new abbey, a Benedictine abbey was founded, and it was founded by a man called William Fitzhamon. And William Fitzhamon was a Norman knight, so he'd come over with King William I, when he was still a very young man, probably a young adventurer, and he'd come over and been part of the Norman conquest of England. And William Fitzhamon was a very close friend of the man who later became King William II. And when William II became king, he gave William Fitzhamon lots of lands and manors and things, farmland and estates in this part of the world, including Tewkesbury. And Fitzhamon decided to build a new abbey and to found a new Benedictine monastery in the town of Tewkesbury. And that is exactly what he did. Building began around 1090 and it ended in 1121. And pretty much, apart from in the interior, the vaulting of the roof and some of the windows being redone in a Gothic style in the 14th century, the actual building is pretty much still a Norman structure. The tower is said by people who know more about architecture than I do to be the finest Norman or Romanesque church tower anywhere in the world that survives today. And it is a beautiful church. Now, the abbey here was very wealthy, very powerful. You have all the trade going through Tewkesbury, through the markets, through the river trade. You also have, not too far away, the Cotswolds, and Tewkesbury Abbey had vast land holdings in the Cotswolds and all over the country, and so they were one of the major players. Let me get a chime as well. I don't know whether we're actually going to get the chimes for the hour. Maybe. So they were hugely wealthy. You know, they had this massive wealth from the wool trade, from all of the river trade here, from the markets, and it was a prime target, if you like, when King Henry VIII decided that as part of his break from Rome, he was going to close down all the monasteries. But actually, it was the last of the major monasteries in England to be closed. Now, most of the monastic buildings were demolished, but the Abbey Church survived, which is why we are fortunate enough to be able to still enjoy it today. The reason it was saved is because the town bought it from the king. So King Henry VIII sold it to a consortium of wealthy townspeople for the sum of £453, which was a pretty hefty amount of money back in the 1530s. And that was actually calculated as being the value of the metal that the bells were made out of and the lead on the roof, which was basically if the king had ordered it demolished, they'd have melted down the metal from the bells and the lead and sold it off. That was how they'd have generated money. So for the value of that the king would otherwise have been able to realise, the townspeople were able to purchase the church, and that is why it continues to this day as the parish church of Tewkesbury, with this incredible 11th, very early 12th century tower. And you were talking about dog friendliness, Leslie, and I know Dawn has mentioned, Dawn sent me a lovely article a couple of weeks ago, I think when I was first going to do this tour, when I had to reschedule, about the fact that they have an assistance dog for visitors in the church, and it wears like a little uniform, and if people are a little bit anxious, and it's like a sort of a support dog for visitors, and it walks around the church with them. And but it is a very dog friendly place. But I'm going to show you the west window and the west portal of this church because it's pretty spectacular. Look at that. So the Norman arches with the curved semicircular top, and this idea of a series of increasingly slightly smaller graduated arches is very typical of Norman architecture, Norman archways around doorways, but these are just the highest and the biggest ones that I've seen, and you know, the absolutely incredible architecture. Now I'm going to walk around the edge of the church, the Abbey. I'm losing a bit of signal here, so hopefully that'll soon bump back up. Oh yeah, bumping back up. So this is the entrance to the church. I can't go inside and film. Well, I did take a couple of photos in there earlier on, so I will post them on the Facebook group later. That's the main entrance to the church. And for anyone who is interested in their architectural terminology, here we have a perfect example of a flying buttress, which would have been added to the structure. Wouldn't have been part of the Norman structure, but probably the weight of the roof, and it's very wet ground here, often waterlogged. The walls would probably have been starting to bow outward slightly, and so they would have shored it up with these flying buttresses. And always nice to have a lovely flying buttress there. And we look up at the tower, and I'm going to take you through. There really is nothing of the actual monastery that remains. A few sections of wall and a few pieces of stonework that they've kind of recovered and put on display, but there's literally, literally everything else was demolished apart from the church. And we're going to go down into this section because I think for the time of year, there's a place we were earlier on before I came to meet you for the tour today. Oh, and we're going to walk under a flying buttress. Here's another great one. Look at this. Dawn, are the walls green under the windows? I would suspect it is something leaching out of the glass or the metalwork, that the leading and that goes that holds the glass in place. That would be my suspicion. Incredible building, this, and this beautiful tower is the highlight. Yeah, maybe some copper in there, There are some patches of moss, but I think that where Donna mentioned it, I think was more something that looked like a liquid had been running down, as though sort of paint had been running or something from the windows. But look at this, what a beautiful beech tree. Look at the size of this amazing beech tree. That's what happens when you can allow something to grow for hundreds of years. This is one of the largest beech trees that I've ever seen, and it is in absolutely incredible colours at this time of year. And I thought I did take a photo from here earlier on, and I'm going to try to recreate it. And I did think that a nice final view for today's tour in the autumn colours of Tewkesbury would be this view of the Abbey with that fantastic beech tree. And that is, I mean, I think that's just amazing. And so hopefully that's a nice final view for you, and I've held it nice and steady. So let me, I mean, I know that was a lovely view. This one's not quite so good, but I hope you have enjoyed this walk through Tewkesbury, and I hope my handheld camera work was okay. My right arm literally feels like I've been in the gym for the last hour. Hopefully it's been worth it, and I've really enjoyed this because I think it's a lovely place, and I like all of these towns that we go to, and they've all got so many amazing little stories and historical links. I think I'd like to do another tour in Tewkesbury, and I think what I'd like to do, I've not really talked much at all about the Battle of Tewkesbury, and that's quite deliberate, because I think what I'd like to do is maybe do another tour here where we start off over in the meadows outside the town and work our way up from the Severn across the meadows and talk a little bit about the battle and why it was important, how it played out, and we'd finish again by the Abbey. So I think that's something I might like to do. I might put that one up as another community funded one, because I think it's well worth it, and the battle here was so important in history. So hopefully that's something we can do in the future. So hopefully everyone is okay, and it's been lovely to see you all again. I've been off on my travels a little bit, and prevented from being with you on live streaming, but looking forward to bringing some more tours to you. Thank you, Beatrice, for putting the link up there. Let me see what link it is. That's the Padlet link, where you can find all my talks and tours, and I will certainly be doing a live tour in Buxton in, I think, nearly 2 weeks yesterday. That's the Snow Dogs sculpture trail, so a lovely place and a nice festive themed one, as I'm going to be away for most of December. I have to get the festive ones in nice and early, and that is the link from Beatrice for all of our tours, and you can, if you've missed any of the tours, that's where you can find the catch-ups as well. If you want to watch this one again, of course, this is a free to join tour that will just be on YouTube using the same link, and you'll be able to find that quite easy. And we've got the wish list on Buy Me a Coffee as well, where you can support the next round of community funded tours. So thank you so much to all of you. It's been great to spend some time with you this afternoon. I hope everybody has a fabulous weekend, and I hope there's been a lot of stuff happening this week. None of us have really wanted to turn the news on that much, but I hope this has given you a nice little break from all of the the stuff that's going on in the world, and enabled you to see a bit of beauty, bit of history, and spend some time with lovely people as well. And so thank you for being here, and have a great weekend, and I will see you all very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.